as we notice geography and how there are tectonic plates underneath the earth that move the continents around, we see the massive storms and the beautiful sunrises and sunsets, and how all of that geography affects us. I also believe that we have our own internal geography that sort of reflects the Earth's geography. We have our internal storms. We have our internal sunrises and sunsets, metaphorically. And we have our tectonic plates that shift and move. So I think we as humans also experience these aspects of what geography is. So it's a circular conversation of the Earth's geography and ours. We are the dust of the earth. As I say in the book, we are stardust that talks.
Today we're joined by a truly unique and intriguing figure, Dr. Royce Fitts, author of the new book, Geography of the Soul, Dreams, Reality, and the Journey of a Lifetime. In this book, Dr. Fitts takes us along on his own physical hike across Europe's oldest trail, while at the same time weaving this narrative of his own memories, along with reflections, personal reflections on a host of topics, starting with the Vietnam War, to the political dysfunction in the United States, to the environment, to marriage, to aging, to many more topics. As a marriage and family therapist and holistic spiritual counselor, his personal mission is to become more authentic, which means being more vulnerable. And that, he believes, can help him become a better human being, something that he believes is a basic requirement to change the world. Royce Fitts also takes us on a journey in this podcast episode with his engaging manner and invitation to explore the geography of our own souls. So get ready to go on a stravage, his word for a defiant wandering. I think you'll enjoy the journey. Hello, Dr. Royce Fitts, and welcome to How We Change the World podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored, deeply honored to join you in this conversation.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to meet you. I really am excited that you don't normally get to read a book that you love and then get to speak to the author a week or two later. So it's a very exciting opportunity for me. You have given us all this opportunity, and myself as a reader, to go on a bit of a walk with you through this hugely expansive time of your life that you've chosen to share with the world through this book that you've written, and the title of which is The Geography of the Soul, Dreams, Reality, and the Journey of a Lifetime. And it describes it very, very well. It's a perfect title. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. And we're going to dig into this book right away.
Yeah, good. I'm ready to do this.
Yeah.
As I said, I feel honored, and I feel like that you have an awareness of what this is all about. Not just because you read the book.
Yeah.
I have a sense that deeply this resonates with you, and I love talking with people who get it.
Because this book just came out quite recently. Your book did, right?
Right, last fall, yes.
Oh, so it's been a little bit. I didn't know if it just came out.
November-ish.
Okay. So and you have been talking about it. I've seen you discuss the book, but hopefully we'll take some different directions than that you've taken with other interviews. But I will say, before we do talk about the book, I do want people to know who you are a little bit and what your work has been. So if we can just, you're a holistic spiritual counselor and dream worker, which is just would really just even talk about that for an hour or two would be awesome. But it will reveal itself over the course of the interview. But can you talk about your work and how you came into it maybe a little bit?
Yes. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in about 5 U.S. states right now. I have a background of psychotherapy training and practice for many years, as well as being a theologian, a person that has credentials as being a minister. And those aspects of me have always been blended. I cannot not be one or the other. So my work with people generally has been in psychotherapy settings and in workshops, working oftentimes with troubled relationships or people who are having what we sometimes called our mental health struggles or issues like anxiety and depression. And I focus a lot over the years. I've learned to focus. It has invited me to focus in the area of what I call meaning of life issues. And the central question for me with persons that I work with is, how do we create beauty and meaning in our lives? Because many things we do not get to choose. The stuff of life happens: tragedies, joys, heartache, challenges in work and in other aspects of who we are. We don't get to choose what those are. And as one of my mentors, Viktor Frankl, who wrote the wonderful book, existential book of Man's Search for Meaning, has said it so well, that our greatest and last freedom and power is to choose how we respond. And because of his own journey surviving somehow a concentration camp, that has been a core way for me to navigate myself with people and with myself in the struggles that I have, that we all share in.
It's really nice, I think, sometimes to recognize that one person can write one thing. Well, he wrote more than one, but this book, so many people's lives, I think, have been impacted by that we all have the gift of choosing how we respond to life. So as an author, I think that can maybe give you some, I don't know, jolt of how you might be impacting the world, because that is what this podcast is. How do we change the world? How do we make it better, both on an individual level and global level? And, I know that that's part of your work, is to help people heal on an individual level, because before, and maybe not only before, but before and during the time you're doing work that helps heal the world. So it's really an important message, I think. Well, thanks for explaining that, what you do. And I don't know if we're going to have much time to talk about the dreams, your dream work, but I'm so curious about it. And I think we'll get into the book, and then maybe if we do have time to explore it at the end. If not, I didn't hear this until just recently, but you have a podcast about dream work. Is that right?
I do, yes.
Yeah. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called the Healing Dreams Project, and how we are able to be in tune to dreams and explore dreams for our own health, healing, and wholeness, for the world's health, healing, and wholeness. And be careful about asking me about dreams, because that is such a passionate. We'll be working on that. I do want to say, just if Please. I may, the fact that we as humans dream, and I believe all life forms seem to have some indication of dreamlike experiences. The fact that this has been happening for us since the beginning of our evolution, that dreams seem to be a way to help us uh, evolve in some ways, to be to be better humans and also to be better life forms. That this is a pattern. I believe dreams are an instinct that we cannot get rid of. And they are, in a sense, a foundation for who we are as a species and where we're going. Now, well, I'm going to stop there because
you can say you can.
Well, it's like, for me, what we call imagination could not happen. We cannot get ideas. We cannot have new thoughts or new inventions unless somehow the energy that we call dreams, that instinct of creativity, offers that. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't necessarily offer a new invention if we look at a dream, although once in a while that probably happens. And if we study the history of dreams, but that instinct of creativity that is so embedded in us, it moves us into the directions of imagining in our waking world something new, some way to move or grow or change. And I think it affects our physical biology as well as our ideas and intellectual capacities to change and grow.
This is amazing. I would never think of dreams with all that potential and power. I mean, I haven't studied them as you have, but it surprises me that you speak about them with such, that they have such a power, really, in our lives that we're like 99% unaware of. But you also talk in the book. Sorry, go ahead. Respond to that.
Well, we are aware of very few dreams. And this is also part of what is inspiring to me, is that we don't have to necessarily pay attention to our dreams. Most of us don't. We have thousands a year. We may remember one or two a month, whatever. However, it doesn't seem to matter in the long run, that these aspects, this instinct of who we are, keeps plugging away, keeps rewiring who we are to some extent. And then that invites newness in some manner, imaginative newness.
Even without our analyzing them, even without our consciousness of them. Interesting.
Well, I say that because we have thousands and we only remember one or two. So it's not like, So it is important, in my view, that we nudge those into the waking world where we can have conversations about dreams like you and I are having, because it helps even more to do so. So, and that, I think, can expand our understanding and expand our healing and expand our ability to be in the world in more constructive ways if we actually talk about these things that we call dreams.
So now I'm frustrated because I want to talk about that a lot more, but I think let's shift, because maybe we can reserve another hour in a few months or something and we can return to this, because there's just so much there. I just basically want to ask them, why aren't we allowed to remember them? Why is it so hard to remember? I think that with the subconscious as well.
Those are healthy, normal questions. Yeah. And so just know that I would be happy to come back if you would invite, and we'll spend more time specifically on the dreams.
Well, and dreams actually do come into play in your book quite a bit. You refer many of your dreams from many years ago, which at first surprised me, but then I realized that I still have memories of many dreams throughout my life too. So, so you definitely, we'll touch on it just indirectly by talking about the book, because some of them are waking dreams, which we can also talk about. All right. Well, there is so many entrances into where we could pick up the story of this book, because you do talk about your life in such authentic and raw detail. I would, not raw, but naked. I don't know, like very real. Let's put it that way. And so we'll talk about those, but also so much about the actual journey that you're on. So why don't we set it up by having you talk about this actual physical journey that you went on, about which the entire book is predicated.
Right, because in 2009, I was sitting in my living room on the prairie in Nebraska, from where I'm from, and was reading the New York Times travel section, and I saw this article, and it was called "Hiking into History." And I love hiking anyway. I'm an outdoors person, and I love the idea of exploring our history. And where I lived in Nebraska, there's such a deep human and prehistoric history there, as there is everywhere on Earth. So I'm always, interested in something like that. And this article captivated it. It captured my imagination that in England, in southwestern England, north of London, about 50 or 60 miles, is what is labeled as the oldest road in England and Europe. And I thought, well, that's pretty old. I wonder what that's about. And as I read it, it predates the Romans being in England. And what it actually described is that when the Ice Age, the most recent Ice Age, receded about 10 to 11,000 years ago, it carved, some geography in England, and it left a ridge. And that ridge began to be used by prehistoric beings and eventually by humans. And this is another piece that just captivated me, is that before the English Channel existed, when the ice wall and the earthen dam that was there holding back what we now call the North Sea, that road traveled all the way across England, across what is now the English Channel, and into Europe, and just kept going. So it was labeled the oldest road in England and Europe, somewhere around 5,000 to 8,000 years ago. However, if the Ice Age receded 10 to 11,000 years ago, it had been used by, who knows, all kinds of animals and beings and early humans. It became a way of commerce and communication, and also probably for battles, for territory, and just for people to have ways to go from one point to another. So the article focused on the tiny village of Avebury, England, that has the remains of standing stones, sort of like Stonehenge, except about 1,000 years older. And at one time in history, it seems that there were miles and miles of these huge stones that were placed all along the Ridgeway. And nobody knows
how,
for what purpose. Yeah, how or what purpose.
Yeah, like Stonehenge.
Exactly. And so there are remnants now that are left, and the remnants are imposing, and they seem like sentries to guard this.
That's interesting.
This location, and this little tiny village emerged over the hundreds of years as after they were not used for their original purpose. So this captivated me. Also, I have English ancestry. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to take a hike, a trip on that road? And now what is preserved is less than 100 miles. And I thought, I can do that. And so that was what inspired me. And so I bookmarked the article and would often review it. But it wasn't for about 10 years that I actually took the walk. But it compelled me. It did not let me go.
What was the title of that article again? Because it seemed very compelling to me as well. Oh, Walk into History? Is that what you said?
Hiking into History.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, November of 2009, New York Times travel section, if our listeners wanted to dig into that.
Yeah, well, or they can dig into your book and learn a lot more than they would from the article.
Yes, thank you. I would love that.
So how does the title Geography of the Soul, how does that reflect to you what some of the core themes of that book are?
Yeah, so that question touches my heart. So I believe that as humans, as individuals, as some life forms on our planet, we are connected to the geography from which we have come and on which we explore our world, whether it's an urban landscape or wilderness. I believe that we are affected by the land, by the earth, way beyond our conscious knowing. And also, we affect the land and we affect the earth, some of which we know about and a lot of which we do not know. So I believe there's this kind of a built-in conversation that is always happening between us and our landscape and the landscape with us. It's a very circular kind of relationship. And that's why I like to call it a conversation. Sometimes it's conscious, many times it's unconscious that we have these deep connections. So as I was raised on a farm and in farm and ranch country, and I know what it feels like to get dirt on my hands and to try to help crops to grow or to see them not grow. And also, how does that affect who we are as a people? So as we notice geography and how there are tectonic plates underneath the earth that move the continents around, we see the massive storms and the beautiful sunrises and sunsets and how all of that geography affects us. I also believe that we have our own internal geography that sort of reflects the Earth's geography. We have our internal storms. We have our internal sunrises and sunsets, metaphorically. And we have our tectonic plates that shift and move. So I think we as humans also experience these aspects of what geography is. So it's a circular conversation of the Earth's geography and ours. We are the dust of the earth. As I say in the book, we are stardust that talks.
Well, that was a much more than I thought you were going to answer that question. I hadn't. I would think that I would have gotten that more, but I didn't fully. So, but I think when you were talking, I just got a little bit lost in your description, because what I realized, and I wanted to ask you this as I was reading the book. You're a therapist and a dream worker, and you're not a writer, but yet your imagery, what you just depicted, the imagery of that, the tectonic plates, the sunrise and the sunsets in our own geography, it's as though you were born to be a writer. You came to it quite late. Unless you wrote earlier, I don't know.
Well, I've written quite a bit that hasn't been published. as you know, in the publishing world, it's hard to
it's
get
fun and
noticed.
games. Fun and games.
Yeah, and that's being nice about it.
Yes, it is. Generous.
It is not easy to do and to get noticed. As we both know, there's lovely stories that have been written that we'll never read because the publishing world is so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sort of a poet, sort of. I am a writer. I'm a person that I love words and to try to find words to describe what it is that I feel or see. And, that's what a therapist does is I sit and reflect with people to try to help them find the words.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are not words that can describe what it is that's rumbling within us.
On both good and negative, I guess we could say, planes. Yeah. Your some of the descriptions in your book, and we haven't actually gotten into you going on this journey yet, but just while I'm on the subject, there's some that really stood out to me, in which they kind of, I walk around with them a little bit, and one of them is I don't know why this has struck me so much. Actually, there's two that come to mind. The first is you as a little boy in church with your bright red leather boots. And you're lying on your back, and you're
in a pew, right?
In a pew, and you've got your legs straight up so that the people behind you can appreciate your red leather. And it was really a powerful image and amusing and fun. Just there's a lot of heaviness in the book, so I really like it too when there's like little pockets of
thank you.
Joy.
That's a fun memory, and
I bet.
Just for the listener, that memory comes to me as I am visiting a 1,500-year-old church in the wildwood of Swincombe, the Valley of Swincombe in England, and I'm walking around this church and feeling its ancientness, the good and the bad stories of this church. And so it invited me to remember some of my own gentle, humorous stories as being a little boy in church with red cowboy boots.
And so proud of them. Well, okay, so you decide at a juncture in your life, let's say, to take this hike, this walk with this is what you call a stravage. So let's pick it up from there about how you decide to go on and where you got the term, at least briefly, because we have so much to cover. And then just you start walking. You just start walking. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was, so one of the more conscious pushes to do this walk is that during a period of my life, I was going through a divorce and also knew that it reflected, that tectonic plate of shifting and changing was also being reflected in other aspects of my life, which was my beautiful private practice that I had. And I was I was disoriented, deeply disoriented about who I am. How am I going to make meaning and make a living with it, after going through those big life changes? And that's when I began to remember more concretely this possibility of walking in England and using walking as a way to heal. So I took some steps, literally, to do that and put my private practice on hold. And as I was sharing with my clients, Royce is going to take off here, and I want to make sure you all will be okay. And many of my clients, almost all of them, were just like, yes, Royce, you need to do that. And one of my clients, who was a difficult kind of soul to work with, that I do explain in the book a bit, but when he heard me describe that, he, in his physical crippled state, pulled himself out of the rocking chair that he sat in my office, and he grabbed my hand and he said, "Royce, you're going on a straveg." And I had no idea what that word meant. I'd never heard of it before, but it's from the ancient Scots, when the English oppressed them and demolished the clan system in Scotland, demolished their clan system and tried to demolish their soul. Many Scots began to rebel, not necessarily with arms, but with a defiant wandering, a defiant way to walk across their land and into England anyway. So it became a resilient resistance, saying, "You may conquer our clan system, our army, but you will not conquer our souls." And so many Scots begin to wander with a aimless purpose. Now, those are contradictory.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of that kind of defiance. So when he blessed me with that word straveg, unknown to me at the time, that became core. So when I went to England, to the Ridgeway National Trail, and began the walk, I purposefully did not plan very much ahead. I knew I couldn't do that and be true to the spirit of the trail, to be true to the spirit of straveg. So I took some risks, and with kind of a wing and a prayer, and my own fortitude, because I'm pretty good about figuring things out about how to take care of myself along the trail. I began to do this walk. I felt the intimidation, though, of it. I felt the fear and anxiety of, where will I stay the next night?
Yeah.
And so I had a bit of a pattern of trying to call ahead and find bed and breakfasts or pubs to stay at. And yet, there were times that I had these, disturbing moments of getting lost and not sure where I would stay. Yet the spirit of the trail, walking the ridge, and metaphorically the ridge way,
Exactly.
What a spiritual, existential kind of name for what I was doing, walking between times, walking amongst dreams, walking history, and also trying to find my own way in this new world that I had no idea what my world will be like.
The book is really your walk, because when you open the book, it's as though the reader is starting the walk. And I think that's what carries one through to the very end, is you want to see what's one of the things. It's also just really fantastic writing and imagery and stories, and it weaves through. So I don't know, as a writer, I know how difficult it is to weave so many things together and have them make sense and have them end up where they belong together and to provide more meaning. And you just, there's no way to separate you from the walk, from the book. It's all very seamlessly placed together. It's very, I've never read a book like that before, honestly, where you just start at the beginning and end at the end, and your journey begins and ends. And it's just, it's very, very unique and captivating.
So, and I appreciate that a lot. It touches me a lot how you're describing this. I knew that this was not going to be a diary of a hike, and I'm going to see this section or walk through this forest, and that was not my intent. When I took that hike, I began to re-experience stories of my life, as well as stories of the trail, the current trail, where it goes, and seeing the beauty of England. and also seeing the history of England. I would walk past these clumps of trees, and inside the clumps were these ancient graveyards that, were 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 years old. And that is, that speaks to me. And here I am looking at farms and looking at crops that are and pastures along the way of the current trail. So that invited me to think of my own journey as a farm kid, as a prairie boy out in the western edges of Nebraska. So these stories emerged naturally, and I felt them, weaving themselves together.
Yeah, they truly did. And when you say that, it made me think of this one scene where you walked into the field with the dairy cows, and they just and you're and I thought, because I've been in Iowa and I have some Nebraska roots as well, and in Iowa, actually, I'm thinking of this time when I was in the middle of a lot of cows, and they weren't dairy cows, so maybe there's a difference, but they didn't look all that friendly, and I was pretty intimidated. And yet you walked in and you were so at home with them, and they came up and, they nuzzled you. And it was just I don't know, it was a great part of the imagery as well, just to see, because the truth about your hike is that, I was picturing at the beginning that I hike a lot in the Colorado Rockies, and it's just, you're on a trail and you're not going through land and cities and meeting, it's just not like that. So I was a little surprised at how much was on that trail, and such a variety of experiences. And they all seem to, or you tied them later into some experience of your own life, and gave that more meaning, and you had more understanding somehow. There was this one scene also that speaking of imagery, that really was poignant on so many levels. And I can't remember when you put it in the book. There was some time around soldiers, that you were with soldiers or something, but or there had maybe it's a military battle. I'm sorry, I'm a little vague on that part, but it was, you thought back to this time when you were young. I don't know if you're in high school or so, and you were in San Diego on a youth religious conference, I think. And,
yes.
And it was just so funny, because you're going swimming, you're going to the beach for the first time in your life, and you and a friend kind of escaped the thing for the day, and you're going to take a city bus and go to the beach, and you don't think to wear clothes, you just have your swimsuits on and your dress shoes. And an image of you sitting in a swimsuit with dress shoes and kind of
on a bus,
and a little, not a city kid, more of a kind of a hipster in a way. Maybe so.
Very innocent, wide-eyed country boy. Yeah.
And all of a sudden thinking, oh, we could have probably changed at the beach. We weren't supposed to wear our swimsuits through town. But then it's funny. But then also this extremely poignant moment where it actually makes me emotional to talk about it. And I don't know. There's a soldier who just got back from Vietnam, and can you just talk about that a little bit? He just says a little bit, but stuck with you.
It did stick with me. I think of that moment quite a lot in my life. So I'm on the city bus in San Diego with a buddy from Nebraska, and as I said, we're just prairie bumpkins here, wanting to go to the beach. And the bus was not very full, but there were two other people, and one person was a soldier. And now I know, at that age, I didn't know what different uniforms necessarily look like. But he was sitting there alone, sort of close to somebody else. And I was just watching him, because he was in uniform. It's like, okay, that's kind of new to me. And he looks over at this man sitting close to him, and he says, I'm just getting out of the service. I'm getting back from Vietnam. And something about that touched me. I felt like he's needing something, some recognition, like the trite "thank you for your service" kind of
Right.
BS that
Right.
happens so much.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was a longing. It touched a longing in me.
Yeah.
And this man sitting close to him just looked at him casually and just shook his head. Like, what?
Gave him
This young man with all the turmoil that Vietnam did to our soul and to the soul of Vietnam as well.
Mm.
For this person to be unrecognized hurt me. And I wondered how he felt about that. And it was like, whoa.
But what it told me, a couple of things, why it stood out to me in my mind and continues to. First of all, you became a counselor of people, and you were, I don't know how old you were, probably 14 or I don't know, I'm guessing something in that vicinity. And yet you did recognize in that moment that the significance, which is massive. I mean, maybe it gains something in retrospect, but you think about how Vietnam soldiers came back either to nothing or to derision. And and somehow this just so it's who you are as a human, for you to be able to recognize it at that age. Hey, say something to this man, give him something. He's actually asking for something, some recognition. So that's why the book is so I think hits so many chords. We're not going to begin to touch on all the different topics that you raised, but it brings, at least depending on the person's age perhaps, or where they have that same encounter, it brings it back to something in their own lives. The personal is universal, or however they say that.
And that, if I can interrupt, that's what I want to do in this book. It's not just the story of Royce, or the story of that trail in England, or the story of the beautiful prairie in Nebraska. I wrote this book to invite, even provoke the reader to wonder about their own geography, their own woundings, their own journey, their own potential for healing, their the responsibility that each of us has to somehow make beauty and meaning, not because it comes naturally or easily. Creating beauty and meaning in our life is hard work. And my hope in this story that I've written in this book is to invite people to do that, to seek their own straveg, whatever it is. It may be on their couch, keeping a journal about their struggles and heartaches and joys. It may be recording dreams and wondering how the dream is trying to help them expand and heal. This is a challenge, I hope, for all of us to do our own spiritual, existential straveg defiantly. I think it's Camus who talks about the absurdity of love. It's like it shouldn't exist. And, this.
Thank God it does.
Yeah. And it does. And, and he says, stand up to this awfulness of life by being in love. It's like, wow, how more profound can we be to defy the awfulness that is sometimes in our world, to defy it with compassion and love and stravaiging out of the box.
I'm really glad that you emphasized how hard that journey is, because I think we're often given with so many self-help books and just, so many people, particularly exponentially since COVID, are struggling with mental health. And even if they're not struggling with mental health, just life, even without mental health challenges, it can be truly hard. And it's not like, I'm going to read this book and get better. I'm going to go to therapy and get better. It's a lifelong straveg. And it's hard work. And to be challenged by it and to come upon the difficulties that one encounters when they truly do try to learn the geography of their own soul. It's hard work, and to know that and to know that that's normal and that's what it takes kind of gives you a boost as you're making your way through, finding your own authenticity.
Right. Thank you.
I wanted to just add that, and this is more an age thing, but that scene with the soldier, really, I think one of the reasons it touched me so it's such a spot in my heart is that it just made me remember something that comes up every few years of my life, is being in high school and the girl behind me who I didn't know, and I don't know if it was right at the beginning of class, but it was, kids came from all over the town, didn't know everyone at the beginning, and she was sitting behind me and she was crying in class. And I had a very similar experience, because I can't remember exactly how it unfolded, but the teacher told the whole class at one point that she had just gotten the message before she came to school that her brother was killed in Vietnam.
Oh my.
And I just remember thinking, what? Why is she here? None of it made sense to me. None of it has still made sense to me. But I had older brothers, doing their thing with the draft. I went in the Navy, and another one trying not to be in anything. And and I think the fear that could also be my brother has stayed with me. And those things kind of catch in your heart for a reason, and you realize you're still grappling with them a little bit. They can kind of surprise you at different times. So that happened a lot for me in your book.
That's a beautiful and sad story.
Yeah.
So real. So real.
And repeated so many times, across the country and the world. I'd like you to talk, so much of your work has, maybe, I don't know if it's been the result of your upbringing in a very oppressive, as it came to be seen by you, religious upbringing, where you talk really powerfully in the book about how I think you were in therapy when someone actually presented to you this image that you were describing an abusive partner, as you were describing your relationship with the church of which you'd been raised your entire life and went 3 times a week in the whole shebang.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, first of all, how that one realization, because it kind of hit you like lightning, right? That
it did.
That's exactly what's happening here. How did that allow you to break away? Because I'm sure there's many people hearing this that may feel that they're in a similar situation.
So when I was in that setting with my therapist, it was marital therapy. So my wife was there at the same time. And I was also working in my doctoral program, to be a psychotherapist. And so that setting, being in another graduate school and in therapy and going through difficult marital issues, relationship issues, there was the cauldron was being stirred a lot, way beyond my consciousness. And there was, I don't recall the specific triggers for that at the time. I do remember that I was describing to my therapist how struggling it was for me to remain connected with the church of my heritage, and how I had envisioned that maybe I could, could stay in it and be a liberal, progressive minister in that kind of setting. And because I knew other people that were sort of successful in that way. And yet I was having all of this turmoil. And I felt like I was at an invisible roadblock. An invisible wall was there. And I kept trying to figure out a way around the wall that I didn't even know existed. I felt like this is the way it's supposed to be. And in her very gentle and firm way, she said, "Royce, what I hear you describing is is abusive relationship with your church. And she compared it in a way that I had never thought about doing that. How an abused spouse will work overtime trying to make the relationship work. And when they can't, they feel like, oh, it's my fault. And, I just am not saying it properly. I'm not thinking this through. There's an idea out there that I just haven't thought of yet. And if I try that, it'll work.
So sad. And
that's when she said, Royce, it sounds like an abusive marriage. And she is a gentle and firm soul, and she would not say that lightly. And she had me with that. And I just stopped with a kind of a shocking silence of, what? Yeah, that's true. And that was the tectonic shift that broke through for me. That with all of my hopes and dreams and loves about the church that I was raised in, I also knew I could not stay and be healthy and be my authentic self. I felt like they, the quote, they were trying to box me up. And thank goodness, thank God, thank Goddess, that those words helped me to break out of that, and my continent shifted. The continent within
my goodness
shifted.
I mean, that really speaks to the so many words I'm fighting for, because there's so many words to choose from. But I'm just going to go with the simple one: the power of therapy. Because you may not have ever gotten there. I haven't had that experience of the power of therapy. So, it makes one wonder how she broke through and saw that. Sometimes it's just saying something out loud. It doesn't have to be a therapist. I'm sure it could be anyone who could just say, do you hear what you're saying, and put it in a different context, and they can really help you. I have to think that you were ready to hear it on some level too.
Right, as the Buddhist says,
right.
The teacher appears, when the student is ready.
Yeah.
So her style of therapy, and no one's asked me this before, Deborah, so thank you for asking it. And I'll try to stumble and describe this. She had a very powerful way of simply being present and reflecting. And when I envision myself of, being with people who are struggling with the essences of life, specifically, or just, in a nebulous way of what is this life all about, I want to be able to be present in a way with them authentically, to support the questions, support the pain, support the wonders, support their curiosity. And I feel like that's what she did. She labeled something that she saw in me that I was not able to see. She didn't impose it. She labeled what she experienced with what I was saying. And it was on target. More than I knew at the time, and certainly I knew it was powerful when I heard it at the time.
It's probably unfolded more and more as you moved away from it. Yeah. You just used a word that I'm glad you brought up, which is authentic. So I honestly, after reading this book, I felt like I actually knew you. I don't know that that's possible, but who is it? Hemingway, who said, writing is like, I don't know, just sitting down at the typewriter and like splitting your wrists and putting it all out there. Like you just,
that's graphic. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you got that graphic, but that was a message that you just, you go and you just like, basically that's it. You're spilling your innards for the world to see, but you really do. You really share your most private thoughts about many, many topics. And I guess I'm wondering if the Straveg in itself, the whole process of getting ready for it, going through it, writing a book about it, did that make you a more authentic person? Did that open you up? Did that allow you to show sides of yourself to, all the strangers out here that are seeing it? Or is that just who you are?
I would like to say it's both. The book nudged me. I feel like my editor, Marisa Gowdy, often would call the book she. She would
that's
say,
funny.
Where
that says a lot.
where does she want you to go? And
Wow.
I somehow, that amazing metaphorical label of letting this book be a human or a soul helped me, because I felt like the book was inviting me to go in places that I'm not always comfortable going. And is that not what life is? And again, why am I writing this? Why do I want to tell the story? It's not just for my sake, although it is for my healing's sake. I want to invite other people to have their own version. It's not going to be like Royce's, but their own version of being authentic and real and vulnerable. I don't like always being vulnerable, and yet
who does?
Yeah. Well, I think Brené Brown calls it a vulnerability hangover.
Yeah.
And I get so many of those experiences.
I bet.
Like, did I really say that? Did I really let somebody see that part of me? It's like, no, please. Well, and so it's not just spilling ourselves onto somebody else. This is about an invitation that I know that as I am working at being more real, more authentic, and that means being vulnerable, that I can be a better human. And my gosh, we need that in our very wounded culture of hostility and fragmentation. And that's what you're about. How can we change the world? This is how we can change it. I work with military members now, and in various settings. I'm getting ready to take an assignment later this summer in Alaska at a joint Army Air Force base, and one of my most transformative experiences, as Royce, who is not necessarily a pacifist, I'm kind of an old peacenik, and yet, and I'm quite anti-military, and for me to be called, and that's a whole nother book, to work in military settings with active military members and their families, this shook who I am. Again, it was another tectonic shift. Mm-hmm. How can I be in that paradoxical space and place where people are trained to kill and also defend, and we are also there to make love and to be persons of healthy change and inviting healing in others? How can we walk in those paradoxical places? They're opposites. And the experience that I had principally in Cheyenne, Wyoming, at the Air Force Base there, that is one of 3 land-based nuclear missile bases in the U.S., I met people that I truly love, and I felt loved by them, and they knew that I am not of them, and they knew that they were not of me. And yet we can have these heart-to-heart dialogues that help us become, this is my way of phrasing it, we are molecules of change in the macroverse. Mm-hmm. I cannot change the world by myself. I can change myself as I move in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I hope I'm doing. And that's what I hope the book is inviting people to wonder, how we can change ourselves to change the world. And that beautiful image of one molecule shifting somehow, kind of another version of the butterfly effect, that something is shifting. No guarantees that it's going to turn out okay. Sometimes I feel like I'm a doomer. And yet this is my best effort to be a healing agent.
And you are not shying away from it. And I'm wondering, I think you went into this military, I don't call it military work, like counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the word? After this Treveg, after you went on this journey. And it must have been pivotal in shifting your entire view and direction, because it was something you hadn't considered, I guess, before that.
No,
you go on this survey.
It's very far from Royce's brain to imagine working in military settings.
But yet it must have, we keep going back to the tectonic metaphor, but something must have shifted, and you said, let me open my eyes. Let me be that racist who sits down with somebody who's of the other color, or that, LGBT, or that other immigrant or whatever, and say, maybe I can listen to this story and maybe I'll be surprised. But you have to grow a lot. You have to reach a certain level of comfort with who you are, what you believe, be willing to be so vulnerable.
And it's not easy. Every day I'm on a military base, I feel my contradictions in my face. And so, doing this is not easy. I don't do it necessarily with grace and beauty. I stumble, fumble, and bumble. And that's part of my authenticity. And for people to come to me and to open up their heart about their life struggles or their questions of what they're about while they're in the military.
It's an honor.
It's like, oh my gosh, thank you. It is an honor. Yeah.
Well, I think I don't know if you wrote about this in the book. Maybe I heard you say this on a podcast, that your job was you're not to document anything. You're just there to become, which, praise the Lord.
I mean, amen. Amen, sister.
If it were, I don't think I've ever said that, but that's how it feels to me. Like, how liberating is that to walk in and not have a doctor writing the whole time, but let me actually be here soul to soul with you, and whatever value you take, and then
that model inside the military.
Shocking. I was shocked.
It is shocking. And, I have goosebumps right now, being aware of how unusual this service is for military members and families, that they can come and see me or another military family life counselor and know that there is no documentation, nothing recorded. Unless, of course, it's there's danger of self-harm, other harm. There are wonderful mental health clinics on the base that are for very formal counseling situations. My role is outside of that. And as you pointed out, I do describe that to an extent in about the first chapter, I think, of the book. So.
Well, we are very reluctantly out of time, very reluctantly on my part. But I do want to ask a couple things. I want to ask, just because I've been through the experience of having, when somebody reads your words that are so true to you, so that were so heartfelt coming onto the page, and then you go out and people are reading them, and I'm just wondering, like, as you have shared your book and shared your innermost thoughts with so many people, what's been rewarding for you about this whole experience? Because you did it in a book form, but other people might do it just in a conversation form. What's What's the reward? Or I'm assuming there is a reward.
Well, so I'm all about meaning making and hopefully trying to be as authentic as possible. And when I hear someone share with me how the book impacted her or his own life, and how it may have nudged them into thinking of the world in a big way, in a different big way, or even a small way. They're the person that I wrote the book for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reward, an enriching satisfaction that that somehow they're inventing their own straveg to go into places that they may not have easily gone to unless the book invited them to become aware of that. Yeah, that's the reward for me, to know that there is that kind of that the invitation is being listened to,
mm-hmm.
and that person has the courage to invent their own way to be real, their own way to be a change agent in the world, a way to help themselves heal, and as they heal, they will help others heal. So that's my reward.
I can totally believe that 100%. And I can only say, I think especially for a person who can, it's not going to be for everyone, no book is. I think for people who start into this book and complete the entire book, or a lot of it anyway, and actually let it in, I think it's almost impossible not to be changed by it. I don't know if this is just my own experience, but I'm trying to think of even how to phrase this, but to me, it was as if it would be a shame. It would, I don't like the word shame, but it would be a loss to not accept the invitation for greater authenticity in one's life at whatever level that comes. Because I think you just feel the reward of your words, of your authenticity, of showing how great it is when somebody actually does let you see their life, and to let strangers, multiple thousands of strangers read it is really an act of courage. And to let that just say, oh, that's what he did, and not absorb some of it and try some of it on for one's own life, it would be missing a very important invitation. So I would just really encourage people to go on this journey and see where it takes you. It's a beautiful one.
That's a beautiful invitation, Deborah, to invite people to do that. And so, yeah, that's a gift. Thank you very much.
Well, maybe that's a good sign off point for us. I do want to just say that you're doing. I want people to understand how they can connect with you. Do you still do therapy? Just
I do.
one-on-one?
I generally have an online practice.
Okay.
And if spelling my name correctly is important in cyberspace, but Royce Fitts, FITTS.com is where people can go, and there's contact information there, as well as there's book information there. The book has its own website as well, but it's all connected.
Yeah.
And it's simply geographyofthesoul.com.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Okay. Well, I'll definitely have those all in the show notes so people don't have to remember that. But I would. What about the Dream podcast is called? Can you repeat that?
Yes. Thank you. Healing Dreams Project podcast. And that can be connected with it on any of the podcast platforms.
Okay.
The reason that we have the word project in there is because it's a play on the word projection.
Oh.
And as people understand the way I do dream work is that this is an exploration of how we project onto other people's dreams and trying to own it for our own self and not just analyze somebody else. We're sharing a soulful experience in the dream work.
Okay, well, thank you. I can't wait to listen to that podcast. And I do want to say, just because a lot of the people on this who are listening are in Colorado, certainly not all by any means, but you did mention to me, I think in an email, that you're going to be at the Tattered Cover in Colorado.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, when is
June 28th, I believe that's a Friday.
Okay.
I'll be there. And
do you know which one by any chance? There's a couple locations.
So I need, there are, and it's the main location. So I need help here and remembering
okay, well,
what
it's
that
probably
is.
Downtown. It's probably in lower downtown, but I don't want to say that. I'll find that if there's some kind of a link or something. I'll also put that on the show notes so people can. I'm sure they'd love to come and.
And I'll have it on my website eventually too. The dates for that and the location. I think it's on Colfax.
That one.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Royce, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Thank you for writing the book, for going on this Shravag and inviting us all to do our own Shravag. It's a lovely invitation that I hope many people take you up on.
Oh, thank you. And Deborah, thank you for getting it, for understanding what it is that the book is trying to offer you and me and to the world. So thank you so much. A wonderful conversation.
It has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much too. Maybe I'll see you at the Tattered Cover. Hopefully I'll be around. All right. Take care.